Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name's Roger McKenzie, Assistant General Secretary of UNISON. Looking not like I'm at work at all because this is a poetry thing and it's World Poetry Day. So welcome to World Poetry Day. Happy World Poetry Day to everybody. Also coincides, incidentally, with the International Day for the Elimination of Race Discrimination, which is today. And which will take us into quite neatly, I think, one of the discussions that we're going to have is about the role of poetry in activism. So, I mean, just let me say something about International Day for the Elimination of Race Discrimination and where all that started from, first of all, as part of my introduction. It's a commemoration of the Sharpeville Massacre of 1960. And the UN decided in 1979 to commemorate the day. It's a whole different debate about why it took them 19 years to commemorate something so hideous, where 60 people got shot for standing up against apartheid, and another 160 people were really seriously injured. But today is to remember that struggle, but also the struggle of people who are just trying to stand up for themselves and stand up for social justice. And I think that's one of the things that we maybe at times have underestimated in terms of the role that art and film and poetry, all of those things are art in my view anyway, have all played in resistance. And when I think to a lot of the campaigns that I've been involved in over the years, I can't help but remember the role that music and poetry have played in just galvanizing my spirit sometimes, because I think one of the things as an activist that you feel quite often is that it's all going wrong. How am I going to keep going? What the hell am I going to do here? And you need something to lift you sometimes, and sometimes that's your friends, sometimes that's your comrades, and that's really important where we can do that. The mark of trade unionism, after all, is solidarity. But when you can introduce music or art, visual art or poetry into that as well, then it is so powerful, so powerful. And so many movements have marched to the sound of poetry, marched to the sound of music, marched to the, with the banners that have been beautifully produced by artists to help just to lift people. And it's often forgotten that one of the things that we speak about in terms of the red flag actually came about from a protest, from a march in Merthyr Tydfil, where some of you might remember the song "The Red Flag," where they talk about dipping the cloth in blood, but it was the blood of sheep that they dipped into the blood, and the cloth turned red. And that's where that came from. And we march to that so often today. But it is important that we know the background to this stuff, but it's also important that we understand the strength of art in helping us in the struggle. And that's what we're going to talk about with our guest today. And let me introduce our guests. Firstly, we have Wendy Blackson, who's one of our poets. Very good poet, I might say. So is Corinna Edwards, and so is Tom Barringer, who were basically were the top three of some brilliant poems that were sent in by UNISON members. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our members who put themselves on the line, really, and sent in their poems for us to have a look at and to make a judgment, to identify a winner. We'll come on to announcing the winner a little bit later, but we're also joined by some other guests as well who are going to take part in the discussion with us. My longtime friend, Jem Wall, actor, theatre activist, producer for us of a film which he'll talk about later on, called Before the Flame Goes Out. And we've also got with us Maggie Fellows, who's one of the contributors to that film as well. So welcome to you all, but also welcome to my good friend, sister, comrade from the centre of the universe called Walsall, well, at least works in Walsall for Walsall local government branch, my good friend Carol Sewell, who is a national executive member of UNISON as well, who was one of the judges with us. So without further ado, I mean, let's maybe have a little talk about the role of poetry in activism. I mean, maybe Wendy, I mean, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I think especially at the most recent inauguration, the power of the word, I think, brought so many people together. I think that poetry allows people to hear what's in common and what we feel as a people, as humans. And I think it also can light that fire in a way I think that other forms of art can't.
Yeah. So what brought you to poetry? I mean, why poetry for you?
Well, for me, all my life, I've written poems or lyrics, but some of the more activist stuff, way back in my 20s, I actually chained myself to Nelson Mandela Hall at Columbia University in New York because of apartheid. And yeah, it was a very long couple of days, man, when you had to go. But it's, things like that. I was very, very active in the pro-choice movement in America. And I just felt that for me to express myself, it was always in notebooks, writing and writing and writing. And this is the first time I'll ever read one of my poems in public. So, for me, it's an extension of my expression. I'm also an artist. So I also draw and paint. But for me, this is a very specific way to express myself.
Excellent. And what about you, Corinna? What brought you to poetry, and your kind of membership of UNISON, and.
Well, I grew up in a very political household, so when there was the miners' strike, I came home and half my toys had gone, and I asked my mum what happened. And they'd been donated to the miners, and we had Troops Out of Ireland meetings and everything. So I grew up in this fantastic place where, as a child as well, I was encouraged to join the adults and talk to them about things. And it's always kind of just been in me, really, to care about things, to care about equality, to feel the need to act in when I see injustice. And also poetry is kind of in the DNA, because both my dad and my uncle, two working class lads, grew up in Essex in a household with virtually no books, but both ended up being surrealist poets. I mean, I don't know what the chances are of that happening, but they did. So kind of writing's in the kind of family DNA, definitely. And I think I won a competition at 7 at primary school for a poem about a salmon. So I think I've been chasing that pinnacle of achievement ever since. So thank you. I only had to wait however many decades. So brilliant. So, I mean, I write as well. I write novels. I work 3 days a week at Brighton Hove City Council. I've been a union rep for 4 years. Actually just got voted in as joint branch secretary of Brighton.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a big branch. And I think one of the things struck me is I did a Christmas creative craft fair at work, and the amount of members, and that's why I think this event's brilliant, because the amount of members that had other talents, that made things, wrote things, created things. And I think it's great for the union to kind of, give that creativity a voice as well. But I think for me, because I write short stories, novels, but I think about poems is, for me, they're a bit therapeutic, because they're a really frictionless, quick way to express yourself, compared to writing 100,000 word novel, and there's a kind of authenticity, I think, because you've got to pack the punches in a short period. And actually, Wendy, I wrote a poem on the morning of Trump's inauguration called 9/11. The morning we found out he was voted in, and because I just felt at the pits of despair, and it just made me feel able to carry on with the day. I kind of got it out of my system. So I think for me, poetry is my poems are often a bit darker than my longer writing, because they sometimes are about just trying to get something out, or sometimes they're about trying to communicate with people when I know it's a very difficult time, so it's trying to provide some kind of shared experience. You know, and in a way, COVID, living through all of this, is a collective experience, and maybe, you know, fingers crossed, we might come through this a bit more united, because this is going to be part of all our identities, isn't it, going forward, that we live together through this time and these challenges. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, how that pans out, really, and if there's something positive. But yeah, I just really like the form. Yeah, you know, your ideas, your thoughts down really quick, you know, whether you're writing them or whether you're reading them, you know, I think it's just really effective.
Yeah, cool. Tom, about you? What brought you to poetry?
Well, I think I certainly was into poetry like much earlier than I was into kind of trade unionism. Like, I think, like Karina, I did poetry at school. I was a member of the poetry club. I did like recitals and stuff like that. But I think more and more, sort of as I kind of like got into, as I sort of started working and being employed, and realizing sort of what that means and how that's so often exploitative, I felt poetry as a kind of a method of catharsis. And I think, like, Karina, you mentioned sort of like writing poems in moments of kind of despair, and I think that's a really important thing to. That really spoke to me, because I think, Roger, you mentioned that sort of poetry can lift you, and it can sort of cheer you up, and it can make you happy. And I think that's important, but I don't think it's the only purpose of poetry. Like, sure, you can hurt constructively when in poetry, and you can kind of hurt collectively in a way that sort of says things are bad right now, but we're gonna pull together. We're gonna get out of this together. And obviously that's what trade unionism is. So it's a really nice meeting.
I mean, a lot of the poetry that I've been reading over the years, and it might surprise a lot of people watching this to think an assistant general secretary, trade unionist, actually reads. I love poetry, and even took a course in it one time, just to try and see if I could write it, and I have written some, but I'm not going to share any of it on here. But for me, some of the poets that I've particularly I'm really fond of, love Maya Angelou's work in particular. Well, not in particular, because in particular is June Jordan. And for me, June Jordan and her ideas around poetry for the people, and bringing poetry closer to people, making it accessible to people, trying to encourage as many people to write as possible, but always with a message in there about what we face as working people. At the moment, it just really spoke to me, that work. And I was just listening to a podcast earlier on today about how June died some years ago now, but the Poetry for the People program that she started at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, is still running to this day. And I just think that shows the power of that, and the number of people who are able to come through that program and be talking about some of the things that are facing us today around climate change, but also particularly for me at the moment around Black Lives Matters, around the really serious issues that we have around racism at the minute, but also around making sure that is intersectional, and that we talk about the issues that are facing women as well, and we don't forget that Black people can be women as well, because often that gets left out of it. And it just really speaks to me, that work. I mean, Jem, you long time involved in the arts, particularly around acting. I mean, how do you see the role of the arts in terms of resistance, in terms of politics, in terms of the contribution it makes towards activism?
Yeah, I think hugely. I think all good art, and certainly theatre is part of that, and certainly poetry, art is about change. And I went into theatre because I wanted the world to change, and it goes from small to big. Some especially poems, it can maybe, I suppose after a piece of theatre, I want people to feel differently and think differently. And I think the power of live theatre and live arts events to change people is absolutely huge. And I mean, it kind of began for me. I'm very struck by what you said about music, because really the first poetry I got into, I didn't love school, and I didn't really get into it at school because it was too much like school, you know. But I got into punk. That's what got me into art and change. And I think, like a lot of people, although I love the music and the energy and the clashing guitars, all of that, and the anger, but what I also really love the lyrics, and I studied those lyrics, you know, and that actually was a form of poetry, I realised. And what you said about that collectiveness, I mean, for me, it was like the mosh pit, you know. It was, and I remember seeing, I mean, it's how old I am, seeing Paul Weller go into the Lyceum when he was in the Jam, going at the stage door. And like me, he had spots and bum fluff. And then on stage, he was like a god, you know, and honestly, they band was tight like a muscle, you know, and it was that moment, it was about transformation. He was from, you know, Woking, and I was some suburban kid where you didn't really do the arts. And in that moment, I thought, oh, you can transform. You can be different from what you were. And that's a personal thing, but also that power of it to go out. And then you read something like The Mask of Anarchy on Peterloo, and suddenly those things started to make sense to me, which the teachers have tried to tell me about, but it didn't really connect. But
yeah. What about you, Kaz? I mean, do you get a chance to listen to much poetry, or read any poetry?
Yeah, welcome everyone. For me, I like reading them, and I tell you what, the one poem that keeps sticking in my mind throughout my age has been The Owl and the Pussycat. I've just always loved it, you know, and it's one of those things that you can hear just repeating. As soon as somebody says a couple of words from that, I just know it, especially if it comes as a quiz. So yeah, it's always been that for me. And I remember in my school days, I know whenever I talk to people, and by the way, I'm from Sandwell, not Walsall, just get that right, even though we are the centre of the universe still.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
Exactly.
I tried to promote you, Carol.
I know, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But no, I remember, I remember at junior and infant school, we were always taught, listen, with me, I've got one of these imaginations. If I start reading it, I'm actually going into the poetry. I don't know if you can hear what I'm saying, but like I said about the Owl and the Pussycat, I can just imagine just being there, lying, trickling in the water and that kind of thing. But so my imagination takes me away. Listening to Radio 4, where they have sessions on there as well, I just get mesmerised and I just go into it. So I love it. I absolutely love reading as well, but I think poetry is a totally different art, and it's so expressive as well. And I think that's what I actually saw in all of the poems that I actually read from you. And I really did like yours, Karina, because it was one of these ones where the rhyming sort of happens in each line. So for me, I absolutely love it. So again, I'm akin to all of that. And I think what all of you have said is where I'm at. And that's something that you said as well at the beginning, Wendy, about the activism thing about with me. I remember I was in Barclays Bank in South Africa, and I left it when I was 70. I thought, right, I'm not going to put my money in that bank, and then I left there, and then I went on to the other idea of not having Cape Apples either. So I'm like you, very militant at a very young age. So yeah, but it's all about art, isn't it? And art for me is fantastic. A lot of people look at me and they think, oh, she wouldn't do that, but I love classical stuff, reading and all of that. So yeah, I'm well into what you're saying, Jen. It's fantastic to be able to go to a theatre and listen to stuff and just get lost in that moment, and everything else around you just isn't part of it. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with it. Thanks, Roger.
Great. Maggie, do you get to read much poetry?
To be honest, no, not a massive reader of poetry, but I am a massive reader, and I am. And as with Carol, I lose myself in books, and I lose myself in films, and I like, if I want to go back to something that I feel when I'm not going through a particularly good time, is the Chronicles of Narnia. It's one of my favourite of all times collection of books. I just love them. I just love what they preach and what they say, and I just love, it's just those are the sort of things that I get involved in. I'm quite a childlike reader, so I like things like, that I can get lost in, like Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia and Northern Lights and all of those sorts of things, really. Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely brilliant, because I mean, one of the things that I remember growing up is that it really wasn't the thing to be interested in poetry at all. Not where I was. No, you didn't do that unless you wanted to get beaten up, really. And yet, underneath all of that, when you listen to some of the lyrics that I was listening to in music, if that's not poetry, some of that stuff, some of Bob Marley's stuff, for example, it's just pure poetry. And it wasn't until much later on for me. And I'll tell you almost exactly when it was, when I started thinking, there's something in this poetry, I'm going to read more of it. And for some reason, I couldn't sleep one night, and I got up and I put the telly on. I was living on my own up in Manchester, I think it was at the time. And there was this performance because you couldn't call it a reading. It was a performance by Maya Angelou. And she just came on. She was doing this thing, literally did it just up the road from me in Liverpool. And it was outstanding. It was just outstanding what she did. And I thought, wow, so poetry isn't boring. That's the first thing. And it's not all about trees and fields, because where I was growing up, you had to go a fair way to find trees and fields, actually. But it was about things that were happening to us. It was about our lives, or it could be about our lives. Now, I'm not decrying all the other stuff, that people have written, because some beautiful, beautiful poems out there. But what spoke to me personally was the things that I could relate to, physically and mentally. And those are the sort of poems that I look for and that attract me. So things around the Black Arts movement in particular that come out of that. There's a brilliant poet at the moment, Aja Monet, her name is, who wrote a brilliant collection of poetry called My Mother Was a Freedom Fighter, and I recommend that highly to everybody. You can tell it talks to my politics, because the foreword in that book is written by Angela Davis, right? So it's quite superb. I think it's time that we ask our poets to read their poems to us, really, because that's what brought us together today. And I'm going to ask Wendy first to introduce your poem and then read it for us. Thanks.
Sure, it's simply called Reflections. Happy New Year, we said, not knowing how the world was turning from parties and hugs and kisses and love to masks and distance and gloves. Through windows we waved, at night we prayed, let them live, let them love, let them breathe again. Clapping and cheering, a nation believing, not long now, not long now, not long. In blue and green, people seen but unseen, tirelessly they work and work. They run, too many, too much, the world out of touch, many blind, deaf, and dumb to the truth. Digital dissonance substitutes distance, trying but not finding connection, dissection of why, oh why, do you not stop all the lies and just listen to their words. We're free, the science, we're free. But so many will never see. The kisses, the love, the laughter, the hugs. Happy New Year. Let us hope it will be. Thanks.
That's amazing. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
And really moving. Thank you very much. And Corinna, would you like to reintroduce your poem and read it out to us?
I just wanted to say I'm actually joint branch secretary with Diana Leach, so it's also a job share for the first time in our branch. So hi, Diana, if you're watching.
Yeah. Hi, Diana. Yeah. Good friend. Yeah, cheers.
So this is called Survival Mantra, and this was just really for everybody who's struggled over the last year. I'm going to cry when I feel like crying, laugh when I feel like laughing, rage when I feel like raging, despair when I feel like despairing. I'm going to hope when I feel hopeful, be strong when I feel powerful, fight when I feel vengeful, create when I feel meaningful. I will sleep when I feel tired, talk too much when I feel wired, sit around when I feel bored, accept myself for being flawed. I'm going to sulk when I feel bitter, then might smile when I feel better, drink too much when nothing matters, grieve my normal, now in tatters. I'll hold on tight to my old crutches, fill the gaps with fraying patches, breathe in deep when I'm in pieces, not try to iron out the creases. It's wrong, it's right, each day turns tight around its dance of fight and flight. I'll feel it all, keep in its sight, and bring it all into the light.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you, Corinna. Really excellent. Really moving. Actually, it really moved me hearing you read it out. It's another example of, again, the difference between on paper and actually bringing it to life, reading it out. Quite superb. Thank you very much. And last but absolutely not least, Tom, would you like to introduce your poem and read it out to us?
Thank you. First of all, hi Mum, hi Dad, hi Jen. I know you're all watching. It's really good that you are. So actually, this poem was written very similarly, inspired very similarly to how Corinna mentioned. It was inspired by a quote by Michael Wilshaw, who used to be head of Ofsted, when he said, "Doctors have lost their lives in some cases, and we need a similar commitment from the teaching profession." This poem is called Heroes. What passing bells for those who die as pigs beneath the knife. 100,000 souls, a slaughterhouse of wasted life. Your mind can't take the cruel stupidity, so you retreat to 1917 and call it decorous and sweet. You thank them for their sacrifice. You clap outside your door. You don't explain exactly what their sacrifice was for. You call it unavoidable. You keep them in your prayers, forgetting kinder nations saved so many more of theirs. Turn people into heroes, and it's fine to let them die. A martyr's death is not a thing you need to justify. And now the ratchet crunches, even as the bodies burn, for even now dark forces whisper it's the teacher's turn. There was no plan, no meaning, no excuse for all this pain, no final consolation, no great knowledge we can gain. And in these times, to dodge this fact is harmful to your health. Admit they died for nothing, and in doing, save yourself.
Wow. Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think unwisely what we did was we had a panel of judges who, including me, who were asked to try and choose between not just these three fine poets, but a whole bunch of other poets as well who sent in their work. And can I literally, genuinely thank everybody who sent in their poems to us. And I'm going to make a rash promise here that we make this an annual thing anyway, because I just think this has been such an uplifting thing for UNISON to do. But because we set up a panel, we set it up as a competition. We said we wanted to have a winner, and therefore I think we were unanimous. I think as a judging panel in our final choice, but it was a difficult choice. But I'm delighted to announce that the winner of our poetry competition is Tom. And can I congratulate Tom?
Oh, thank you. It's really very unexpected. I'm really, very, very weird to get that email. Thank you so much.
Well, I don't know why it's unexpected, because it was an extraordinary poem, and the way you just read that out as well you know, I mean, I think there's a certain dramatic kind of element to that you might want to talk to my mate Jem about kind of voiceovers or acting or something as well. But
I can tell you stories about my Rosencrantz. Sorry.
But outstanding, Tom. But also Wendy and Corinna, genuinely really impressed with what you've done, and I'd love to read more of your work as well. And maybe we ought to look at what more Unison can do to not just promote your work and the work of other poets who we have as members during, you know, not just on World Poetry Day, but what we can do to promote that work throughout the year, I think is going to be really important for us. So thank you. So I'm presenting you with a virtual prize, which somebody will tell me what that is at some point, but I can't remember what it is basically because I haven't got the stuff in front of me. But you know, genuinely, I'm just amazed. I'm hoping that you're going to stick with us for the rest. You know, the three of you stick with us for the rest of the broadcast, because we need to move on now to talk about another kind of foray into the arts for Unison. And again, the theme, as it was with the poetry, was to speak up for our members who have gone through this horrendous time through COVID. Many of our members put in harm's way. Personally, I think quite deliberately in some cases, because that can be the only explanation why you wouldn't provide PPE for our members, particularly as it's turned out that we knew some of these employers did have the PPE available and chose not to give it to our members. I don't know how they can sleep at night and look at themselves in the mirror on a morning, frankly, but our members have been heroic, and we wanted to do something to help to remember that, but also to produce some tools for us to use in our education programs, and as we said right at the beginning, to help us to, you know, use the arts to help the organising that we do within the union. So Jem Wall, long-time friend of mine, and we go way back. But as Jem was saying in his introduction about the work that he does, one of the things that he does, he's got a very keen kind of desire to make sure that the arts speak to things that are happening now and speak to the activism that needs to take place, and materials are produced that can help us as a union, help us as a movement in that work, and that's what he's done. So him and other colleagues from Hydrocracker have produced a film called Before the Flame Goes Out. Jem, do you want to give a quick introduction to that before we go and look at the premiere? This is the world premiere, I believe, of the film. So, Jem, can't hear you, mate.
So I was so hit by the poems. Yeah, and just to say sort of thank you, really honoured to be invited here and have the premiere with Unison. And I was on the judging panel, and just to echo that, we talked about like poems as a thing of kind of solidarity, and to be able to read all those poems, not just those three winners, but all of them, have been like little nuggets of strength, which I've carried around for me since I've had them. So just to say thank you for that, and for having me here and to be able to share the film. So look, a little bit about the film. As Rog said, I believe, you know, for me, Hydrocracker and making any art is about change. We recognised when lockdown came and COVID that it's a crisis, and I suppose a thing about a crisis is you see your society maybe clearer. All the cracks, all the inequalities just seem clearer, and it seemed an opportunity to take advantage of this moment and really raise some awareness about it. I'm a great believer. History is the struggle of remembering over forgetting, and I was worried that if things got forgot, the narrative that would happen would be who's going to pay for it. It will be us again. It will be working people. It'll be all of that again, unless we did something about it to stop a kind of collective act of amnesia. So, I mean, very briefly, and you'll see in the film, we got a diverse group of people, but only a small group. And we asked them something very simple, which really was to strike a match. And as long as the match burned, to speak about what they remembered. And imagine that if, when that match is burning, everything you said would come true, what would you say? And we collected those 40 acts of defiance and remembrance and presented them to a poet, an amazing poet. And I do want to name check this guy, a guy called Raymond Antrobus. He's just a brilliant poet. And he listened to all of these flame videos, and the poem was created to honor those voices. So this was a collective act of defiance, gone to a poet, and the poet's written his poem in response to them. And then what we did was collage that all together on film. And I suppose just the last thing I want to mention is it's done, it's performed in BSL, British Sign Language. I've gone through so much of my life thinking the theatre work I'm doing has been so accessible. And last year I began to realise I'm missing so much. You know, I've for so many years ignored really, for example, the deaf community. And we're just starting a process now to make our work way more accessible. So this is performed in BSL, not in the little corner, but at the centre of the piece. And that's another piece of activism I'm trying to get involved in, is to make all voices heard. And I've realised I've missed that with my company's work for so long. So those are it's a collective act of defiance and a piece of poetry. I think I'll let the film do the talking, and
let's go for it.
You think about it. And Maggie in it, who's here today. Maggie has contributed.
So we'll see the film. We'll have a chat with Maggie some more about her feelings about it as well. But let's see if the technology does us proud. I can tell you all, I've been on stuff over the last couple of days where it hasn't always worked, but fingers crossed. Let's see. Steve, can you do the biz?
List of demands, or things to light on fire. Calendars. Pillows. Briefcases. Park benches. Eviction notices. Exes. Friends. Kitchens. Deck chairs by the lake. Umbrellas in hallways. Hallways. Gardens. Balcony concerts. Candles by the bar. Candles by the window. Candles by the river.
I play wheelchair basketball, and having to stop doing the one thing you love doing every day of the week takes away who you are.
National anthems. Police training manuals. Last calls received. Last calls missed. Screen time. Neighbours' names. Neighbours' shopping lists. Bin bags, milk, bread. 0-hour contracts. Redundancy notices. Grocery stores. Groceries in plastic bags. Plastic bags. Jugglers' swords. April rain.
PPE, personal protective equipment. Everyone's heard of it now. FFP3 face masks, visor, gowns, gloves, aprons, hat, arm covers. Hot, restricting, suffocating, and there's been shortages.
Britain needs you posters. National curriculums. Prison pen pals. Coffins. Car parks. Stopped traffic. Adopted dogs. Abandoned tobacco. Marriages. Knees on earth. Shoes on necks. Hearts. Yellow campfires. Unexpected fireworks.
I feel like it has given me this focus and this drive, which is beautiful.
And I've heard people suggest that the COVID-19 crisis has reawakened people to the issues that face them. Even though that is true, that doesn't mean very much. That has not necessarily created the kind of change that we would want to see. That awakening could just as easily come to nothing.
Where I live, 60% of all kids in receipt of free school meals don't receive an education.
I started up a food hub, and that opened my eyes up to the community.
Look around you and see who is throwing petrol at this flame. Because they know when it burns, it feels good. But ask yourself this: do these people want to help me be safe? Or do they want to keep me scared?
There has been revolutions and social movements around the world lately, which means the ruling classes are not holding on to their power.
Give me the silence, give me the fresh air, give me the star-filled skies and the animals growing brave.
I think that what we need to do now is really dig down and work with people in our communities.
People need to have time for themselves, with their family, with their lovely daughter like Layla here, and she's going to burn her finger any second and it's out. Thank you.
Wow, just outstanding stuff. And can I thank everybody who was, all the people who helped to produce that film. Personal thanks, and thanks from UNISON as well, and also, of course, thanks to the Arts Council for their funding. Should absolutely recognise the important work that the Arts Council does, and there are far too many politicians around who would not recognise that work. We should, I think, but outstanding stuff. So Maggie, you were one of the people who participate in that. You talked about PPE quite rightly, and what's been going on with that. How do you feel having seen that film?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched it more and more now, and it's sort of I'm looking in and seeing more and more in it, because when I saw it originally, it was just trying to take everything in. So yeah, it's a powerful piece, and there's some really good points made about how people were feeling around this time of COVID, really, from different perspectives. And I mean, I think if you'd done this in another time, it would have been a totally different piece. But but yeah, it was everybody's, and obviously with the BSL as well, the British Sign Language, obviously makes it more, you know, sort of visual as well. And for me, you know, I'm a procrastinator, so to put together something to the time of a match, and I'm not a natural writer. I'm dyslexic, and as the same with you, Roger, I didn't have the greatest of starts in life with my education. So, you know, I just put from what I felt from the heart, really, and just did it with myself in my room, trying to light a candle with my iPad, trying for it not to fall over every time I tried to do something.
No, it's outstanding. Carol, you know, I mean, what's your feeling watching that?
Do you know what? I feel I've got such a heavy heart now because it was so powerful. I wanted to start crying at the very beginning because, you know, when you just see and you can feel it. I've not had anybody that's been close to my family that's passed, but you can just imagine what all of those circumstances just put together in that film. And for me, it just encompassed the whole year, what we call a mashup, and it was absolutely brilliant. This has got you've got to put this out there as some sort of trial or something on TV, because I really do think it's a very powerful film, and I love the idea of you've got the BSL in the middle and the centre of it, because I think we do forget about people who have, you know, problems with hearing, and I think that needs to be one of the things we bring out. But yeah, I was part of it and I felt it to my heart, and fantastic, Jem, absolutely brilliant, so moving. Absolutely.
I'd just like to as well just pay a little bit of tribute to all those 40 videos. Not all of them are in there. When we were and something you said, Maggie, about a lot of people said about poetry, and I've been honoured to see all those 40 videos. And when people strike a match, it's like you're almost forced into poetry. You know, there's ums and ers and all that stuff, but people speak from the heart. As kids, we all write poems. All kids are poets. There's only, I mean, you three who are here tonight and the other people have continued to be poets, and that's brilliant. A lot of us don't. I don't write poetry anymore. I love it, and it means a lot to me. But seeing people who would think themselves as not great speakers, like Maggie saying that, but you watch Maggie's video, the whole thing is beautiful. I promise you, it is like poetry to me. 40, there's so much more there. And honestly, I've carried those 40 pieces of poetry with me, and they have sustained me through this year. I tell you, they absolutely have.
You know, I'll bring you in a minute, Tom. But I mean, one of the things that that film did to me this time watching it. Obviously, I've seen it before. I mean, a few weeks ago, really good friend of mine died from COVID. One of our branch secretaries at George Eliot Hospital in Warwickshire, by the name of Dawn Downs, and it reminded me of her, but also so many Unison members who've lost their lives. And I've got the metaphor of the flame going out, and all of those people's flames going out, but also you can light another flame. And for me, it's the flame of activism. It's the flame of what are we going to do to stand up together as a union to make sure that the people who are responsible for this are held to account. And I know that our General Secretary, Christina McKenzie, is working really hard on that at the minute to make sure that these Tories who've made these decisions are held to account, and we really need to make sure that we back her on that. Tom, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's. I think there's what you just said about what you just said about the flame going out. It links into what Jen was saying before about forgetting, right? And I think there's a real danger right now that we're going to. Not only a danger of us forgetting this entirely, but also a danger of us remembering this wrongly, and sort of because I think we're right on the cusp of like remembering 2020 as sort of the year where all of these people laid down their lives for Britain in service of some nebulous thing that's not really that's not really ever been explained to us. It's really, really good to hear that Christina's going to be like pushing for an inquiry. I hope she pushes for trials, social murder trials, because I think that's what we need.
Yeah, I mean, these people need to be held to account for what's happened, but we must remember our role in all of this is. You're right, you settle. Our role in all of this is to make sure that our voices are heard wherever we are, that it's not just left to one person, it's not just left to the centre of the union, but everybody, everywhere. Our 1.3 million members, whether they work in social care, whether they work in the health service, whether they work in parts of local government that have been working so hard to support this, wherever you work, whatever you do, we have to stand up and make sure, and I think you put it beautifully, Tom, not just that people forget what's happened, but that people misremember, because there's so many, there's going to be so many influences to try and get people to remember this time in a different way than it is, and we can't allow that to happen. And that's what makes films like this so important. So this will be used on our education programs. It will also be available on our YouTube channels as well. We'll make sure it's shared around on social media, so please get as many people to share it as we can. But what we'll also do is make sure, because it's on those platforms, that our branches can use it and show it branch meetings. You know, we just need to get this remembrance out there as far as we possibly can. So Jem, thank you and your colleagues for what you've done in putting this film together. It's not going to be the last collaboration that we've had. And on that note, there is another announcement that we've got. There needs to be. We should have had some kind of drum roll thing going on in here, shouldn't we? Really, I don't know. We'll look at that for next time. But Jem, you have an announcement to make about collaboration with UNISON going forward.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to say that UNISON, we're really finding ways to work together more, and there's going to basically there's going to be some poetry workshops as part of UNISON Learning Week, and I think the date I've got at the moment is May the 19th. I know it'll be in May, but please keep a lookout for that. I mean, I think there are 30 or 40 poems this year, and Roger's already promised another poetry event next year. And I hope there'll be more. We'll get more people to write poems in unison, these activist poems, more little sparks of light to keep the memories going. And let's get 80, let's get 120, 40 poems. And we will be running, Hydrocracker will be running, to support that, a couple of workshops on May the 19th to support this thing of writing activist poetry to create change and solidarity and defiance and memory. We've basically got better stories than those Tories, but we need to tell those stories. The only other thing I'd say, when you, sorry, it's a slightly different thing, but if you do tweet and stuff and share the film, I'd be so thrilled, and I will pass that on to the participants that this is happening, and they'll be really thrilled, and Raymond too. Please use the hashtag before the flame goes out, all one word, and then we can really keep collecting that stuff. So yeah, hashtag before the flame goes out.
Absolutely. I mean, just to wind up our session for today. I mean, there might be some people around who are saying, "What the hell has this got to do with UNISON anyway?" We just need to stick to pay terms and conditions. That's all we need to do. Well, I refute that. Actually, I think we're bigger and better than that. I think we have 1.3 million members with loads and loads of skills, loads of different ways of coming into activity within our union, loads of different ways of being able to contribute towards building power for working people in the workplace. I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to make a difference, really make a change for our members, is the power that we are able to build in the workplace, more members that we can have, but also more people doing things, and people will come to activity. One of the things that I've learned over the years, people come to activity in our union in lots and lots of different ways, and we have to nurture that, we have to promote that, we have to give people those opportunities to come to our union, but we also really should never, in my view, underestimate the power of the arts. We should never underestimate the power of film. We should never underestimate the power of drawing, of painting, and of course of writing creatively, and in particular for me about poetry and music. And for me, these are things that help to develop us as not just individuals and not just as people who might work together, but help to develop us as a community of people who work together and a community of people who want to see things in a much better way than things are at the minute. And for me, that means building our trade union in the best way that we can. And this has a massive contribution to make, as far as I'm concerned, in that work. So we are going to continue this work. We are going to continue to find ways of encouraging people to find their way into trade union activity, but also to share that out with people and inspire other people to take an active role as well. So if you're watching this and you are not a member of UNISON and you work in public services, please join UNISON. You can do it online. So I'm encouraging you to do that now. If you are a member of UNISON and you are not active within our union, I'm asking you to get active within our union. If you are a member of UNISON and you're already active within our union, I'm asking you to get somebody else active within our union. That's the only way we're going to build. It's the only way we're going to stand up for the things that we've talked about this evening, particularly at these really challenging times that we all face. I want to conclude with just one other thing. After just once again thanking everybody for their participation this evening and all the work that you've done in putting together the poetry, and Jem and Carol and Maggie for coming along as well, and our brilliant three poets. I want to say that, you know, we do have to stand up together. We do have to organise together. We do need to build our union together. We're only able to do that if we stand together, if we make sure that these people who are trying to divide us against each other for all sorts of spurious reasons. Some people divide us because some of us are black, some of us are white, some of us are men, some of us are women, some of us are transgender, some of us are straight, some of us are bisexual, some of us are you know, lesbians, whatever, right? We will be weaker if we are divided against each other, and we have to stand up with each other and for each other wherever you are in the country. And I just ask you all to do that, because people are trying to divide us against each other. The only way that we are able to win in our union is if we organise. If we use these tools that we have talked about tonight to help build our union and to help build real power within our workplaces, but also what comes with that is building real power within our communities as well. So can I once again just genuinely thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done for UNISON and all that you will continue to do for UNISON. Thank you for your art. Thank you for your writing. Keep writing. Send it in to us. Don't just wait for World Poetry Day. Let's try and keep this stuff going in the union. We'll try and get this stuff published on our website if you send stuff in to us. You know, let's keep the importance of the arts alive. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks everybody for supporting your union, and stay safe and well, everybody. Good luck. Take care. Solidarity to everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.